Hello everyone, and welcome to this third video of Linear series. Today's video will focus on international sanctions imposed by the Canadian federal government. These sanctions are one of the most important political tools available for states, as it allows to act without threatening or using military forces. According to the United Nations definition, the international sanctions are coercive measures that are applied against states, non-state organizations, or individuals that pose a threat to international peace and security. The most common measures are economic and trade or financial restrictions, such as arms embargoes or individual sanctions that are directed against very specific, very certain individuals. It can be things such as bans on entry into other states or asset freezes. As a general rule, sanctions should be directed to the greatest extent possible at the individuals or institution, very specific institution responsible for the undesirable policies or actions in order to minimize the adverse effects on innocent third parties. We don't want to break a country, we want to change the way things are done. Canada has sanctions and related measures in place against 21 countries and 3 terrorist organizations as we speak, because things can change really fast. And Canada imposes sanctions when a state or an individual is one responsible for or complicit in extrajudicial killings, torture, or other gross violations of internationally recognized human rights. Second, responsible for or complicit in ordering, controlling, or otherwise directing significant acts of corruption. Or third case, if the individual or the institution is associated with terrorist activities. It is important to be aware of that, because if you are considering to make a deal, a transaction with a country subject to a UN or a Canadian sanctions, it is your responsibility to verify that the transaction is legal. And it is your responsibility to seek pre-export approvals from the appropriate national authorities if necessary. And the first example we can use today would be Nicaragua, where the legal situation is pretty clear and the sanctions are pretty readable. The regulations came into force on 21st of June 2019. It came into force. The text is called the Special Economic Measures, which is specific to each and every country. So for Nicaragua, the special economic measures prohibit any person in Canada or any Canadian outside of Canada from engaging in specific activities. In a general way, it is stealing in property wherever situated that is owned, held, or controlled by a listed person. The listed person, the individual we are targeting through a sanction, can be found in the official texts that are, of course, always available online. The measures also prohibit from providing any financial services to listed person, to make available any goods or services to a listed person, or to provide, again, any financial or other related service to someone acting on behalf of a listed person. So you have to be aware of who you're talking to, where the person is coming from, etc., etc. Second situation we found interesting to show to you would be Venezuela, because Venezuela is almost the same situation with Nicaragua. Sanctions related to Venezuela have also been enacted under the Special Economic Measures Act, specific to Venezuela, of course. The difference is that this regulation was created in order to implement the decision of the association formed between Canada and the United States of America on September 5, 2017. The association called on its members to take an economic measures against Venezuela and persons responsible for the current situation there. Even if the legal context is different and you want to be aware of the bigger picture in this country, the special economic measures targeting Venezuela impose the same sanctions as listed below. It is basically asset freeze and delaying prohibition on the listed person and activities. So these are 2 very simple and readable examples where you just want to know who you cannot deal with and what you cannot do in a certain country. But sometimes sanctions can be a bit more difficult to fully grasp the situation. And in that case, you want to find help. You want to ask a question to experts in the matter, and you can find them very easily on the Canadian website, of course. And as I said, Russia is a very good example for a quite complex situation, as the regulation imposes an asset freeze and a prohibition on designated persons, which means Canadians are prohibited from dealing in any property wherever situated with designated persons. Canadian people are prohibited from entering into or facilitates any transaction related to the people and or the region targeted by the measures, the sanctions. And there are also more lists. There is schedules. It is called schedules in the Russian situation. So schedules 2, 3, and 4 impose more restrictions, not on listed persons, but this time on certain sectors. The two most important sectors that are currently undergoing international sanctions are financial and energy sectors. So basically, when you go through the 2, 3, and 4 schedules, you can find that it is prohibited to export, sell, supply, or ship any of the following goods. It can be offshore oil exploration or production. It can be oil exploration or production in the Arctic, or shale oil exploration or production. So you see that it's not always only people, it can be an entire field. It is also prohibited for any Canada and Canadian outside of Canada to provide to Russia or to any person in Russia any financial, technical, or other related services to any good whose export, sale, supply, or shipment is prohibited. So it's not only the field, the transaction, it's really any interaction you may have with clients that could be illegal. So what did we learn in today's video? Even if we've been only through 3 countries out of 21, we understand now it is very difficult to understand the bigger picture. So you want to understand how diverse and complex things can be in one location. As we said before, an expert project should be focused somewhere. It is important for your project to be aware of the existence of such sanctions, so you can ask questions. That is the main thing you have to remember. Ask questions about that. Because in some cases, separate special economic measures in some sanctioned countries authorizes the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to issue to any person in Canada or any Canadian outside of Canada a permit to carry out a specific activity or transaction, or any class of activity or transaction that is otherwise restricted or prohibited pursuant to the regulations. Never be afraid to ask questions. And that would be my last advice for today's video. Let us know what you know about international sanctions and how you dealt with these. Have a great month and see you next time.